So with AI training on everything, right from cat pictures to now medical records, securing data isn't optional anymore. And in your opinion, what are some of the biggest data security risks that you're seeing now, especially around AI training data?
If we take the Google Gemini pizza example, I don't know if you've seen this one, but there was a point in time where you could Google cheese pizza recipe in Gemini and it would spit back a recipe that involved you putting glue in it. Now, I can't cook, and I'm the kind of guy who would read that recipe and go, oh yeah, glue, that's definitely in there. And I'd be putting glue in it. But the reason why we talk about this is because that was dirty data.
Welcome to Discover Dialogues Podcast, powered by Tech Dogs. The world of business and technology is evolving at breakneck speed. AI breakthroughs, digital transformation, and game-changing innovations are reshaping industries every day. On this show, we dive into the trends, ideas, and strategies driving the future. We're sitting down with industry leaders, innovators, and disruptors to bring you fresh insights, bold perspectives, and real conversations that matter. So plug in, tune in, and let's discover what's next.
Today on the show, we have Adam Gale, a cybersecurity and AI leader helping redefine how enterprises protect and govern data in the AI age. As field CTO for AI and cybersecurity at NetApp, Adam works at the intersection of cloud, governance, and advanced threat response, advising some of the world's largest organizations on securing critical infrastructure. With a career spanning finance, public sector, and enterprise tech, he brings decades of insight into encryption, AI readiness, and data resilience. Get ready for a deep dive into securing AI, decoding regulation, and leading with clarity in a complex digital world. Let's dive in.
Welcome to another episode of Discover Dialogues, Adam. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Big fan. Really excited to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation with you.
All right. So, Adam, you've had a career that's probably seen everything, right? So from floppy disks to, field level strategy. And before we dive into the today's challenges around AI and cybersecurity, I'd love for you to take us back to where your journey began and how it shaped you the way you lead today. So let's rewind a bit. How did it all start for you?
You know, it's really funny you said floppy disks because they kind of started with floppy disks, actually. From a very young age, I was interested in computers, and I knew from a very young age I was going to be working with IT or technology of some sort, all the way from having an Amiga computer, and now that's showing my age, Amigas. Now, I've definitely got grey in my beard, but I would format my brother's save disks on his Amiga and overraise his computer games, and he has never forgiven me for that. And from there on, I knew definitely IT was for me. So it kind of started from there. And obviously, I went to university to study computer science, and I ended up in support, which is pretty much where everybody starts, I think, or most people. But I was, to be quite honest with you, not very good at it. So I quickly got out of support. I caused more problems than I solved, shall we say. And I ended up going into pre-sales technical, which suits me much more my personality type, more my kind of field. I absolutely loved it, and was working for a managed service provider for a long time where I met my wife, and then had to quickly move on because we realized we don't work very well together in the same company. And I went to EMC. You might not recognize that name. They were a data company, a data storage company. They've got some really big platforms, the old like Symmetrics and stuff. Now, it's an area that's under talked about, in my opinion, because it's fascinating. It's so cool to work in data because everybody has data. So I got to work in all industries, aeronautics, finance, space, police, water, everywhere, because everybody has data. And it really sparked my interest. And I've stayed in that vertical pretty much since. Went on to work for Dell because ultimately they acquired EMC. And then from there on, NetApp, who again are an intelligence data infrastructure company. And I'm one of those really fortunate people that loves his job. I get up in the morning and I'm excited about my job, which makes me infuriating to my friends, as you can imagine. But that's pretty much it. And specialized in cybersecurity, AI now, and regulation too, which is a passion project of mine. I love reading, thinking, writing regulation, which I'll be honest with you, does not get me invited to a lot of parties.
I can imagine. So, Adam, now that we know your journey, I would love to unpack the battlefield. You sit right where AI, data, and cybersecurity converge, and at that intersection, which is getting messier by the minute, if I may say. Let's get into that. So, with AI training on everything, right from cat pictures to now medical records, securing data isn't optional anymore. Uh, and in your opinion, what are some of the biggest data security risks that you're seeing now, especially around AI training data?
I think that's a really good question, and you're absolutely right. Obviously, there is no AI without data, and sitting right at the front of that, that's an area which we discuss a lot, especially because threats have been supercharged with AI as well. So I kind of break it into two areas. There's the fundamentals and then the specifics around this area. The fundamentals are governance of your data. That sounds like quite nebulous and a big topic, but it's like the foundation of your house. If you don't get it right, you'll never get everything right. So you have to start from there, and it's the basics. It's securing access, so making sure the right people have access to the right data at the right time. Now, again, it gets pretty complex, but there's some really good analogies here. For example, when I go stay in a hotel next week, I get an access key, and I'm only allowed in for that week, and then I can't get in again. We're starting to treat our data like this, just in time access. So only give access to the people you need into the areas they need for the amount of time that they're allowed to do it. People have been doing this actually in the finance industry for years when it comes to payroll and that sort of thing. But we're now just kind of adopting that and really pushing it into the technology stack. So things like that, very, very general. Also, keeping your data tagged, knowing where it is. This is half the battle for most organizations because they've grown organically. They've acquired, they've taken on new projects, and you have data sprawl, and it's really difficult to manage. So knowing what you've got, where it is, and here's the critical bit, knowing what type of data it is it PPI, personal identifier information? Is it subject to any regulation? Those sort of things. Being able to scan it, ironically with AI as well, is paramount here. Because once you've built this foundation, you can then start layering in the real security mechanisms, and that's where the fun starts. And I love to talk about this area. It's the bit that I think is the future of cybersecurity, and love to think about it. So I'll touch on two specific bits: user behavior analytics, and then MAV. There's some pretty cool technologies. User behavior analytics, ironically, uses artificial intelligence. So the way we do it is we build a model in your environment. We look at user access and patterns. So if I create PowerPoint presentations, do these things all day with people like yourself, it knows that. And then as soon as I step out of my boundaries, say, for example, I start creating HR records or finance records, it knows that's not Adam's day job. So it responds. It can do some pretty simple things like flag it to an administrator for review, or it can lock me out of the system. But we have to use these tools now because the speed of threat is sub-millisecond, and human beings can't respond quick enough. So we have to use these. So that's kind of the future and some of the areas that we're pushing into.
And for organizations who are just starting their data classification journey, what's that one action they can take immediately to perhaps gain better visibility?
That's a really good question because it's the hardest thing to do, I'd say. Building that foundation is really hard. First off, I would map my environment. Now, that sounds so easy or such an obvious thing to do, but I've walked into Fortune 500 companies and said, is your environment mapped? And it's not. They don't know where everything is. And this could just be a huge spreadsheet, or it could be a Visio diagram or a PowerPoint, but just start from the beginning and know where everything is. As I said, things have grown organically. Once you've mapped your environment, you can then start applying the tools and the processes to finding out what you need to do. As I mentioned earlier, if we took an example of a water company, which we've worked with, they have different types of data. It's sprawling. They have image, they have video for customer videos and things like that on the website. They have personal identifiable information, customer databases, and they span all of Europe. So they have these blobs of storage sat around different buckets, and they don't know it. They have to scan it, find it, tag it, and then they can start applying the right protection policies. Because as you kind of mentioned, cat pictures, I'm not going to back up cat pictures, but I'm certainly going to back up my customer databases, and I'm certainly going to give them that tier 1 production resiliency.
So from the way I look at it, Adam, classifying and protecting data is step 1. But what is also happening is that the rules of encryption are now starting to shift, right? There's quantum computing, then there's generative AI, and encryption has become like a moving target. And you've talked about encryption and mutability. How do you think enterprises should rethink cryptography in the world of AI and quantum?
Really good question. And it's actually one we're having a lot at the moment. As you mentioned, with quantum on the horizon, and it really is on the horizon now, it's a conversation that's gaining traction. Let's take encryption to begin with. That is an area which is underutilized. Again, if you walk into some large organizations and say to them, is your production data encrypted? Some people might shrug their shoulders. And this is a huge miss. It's an absolute huge miss. Your phone's encrypted. My laptop's encrypted. I bet yours is too. This communication is encrypted. Why wouldn't you be encrypting your production data? And data at rest, data in transit, and data in use. All needs to be encrypted. It's really quite simple to do, and it's a big win. So you need to enable it and look at your key strategy. Don't store the keys on the same box that you're encrypting, have them somewhere else in a secure place. And as you kind of touched on there with the advent of quantum, this is a really important time to look at this strategy. We're already seeing in the news rumblings of crypto wallets being breached, and people asking them questions saying, was this a quantum attack? Just the fact that the question is being asked points to that this is coming. It probably wasn't a quantum attack, but people worry about it. They managed to break one of the lower standards of RSA. I think it was 25 or 26 bit something, using a quantum chip and an algorithm. Again, this could be broken with classic computing, but it points to the fact that we can do it now. It's only a couple of steps away before we start breaking the bigger ones. So the way we're looking at this, the way I'm approaching this is, if you remember again, Y2K, the Millennium Bug, I'm really showing my age. For the people listening or who don't remember that was when our clocks and our computers rolled over to the year 2000. We hadn't really thought about it, so we worried that our computers were going to grow legs and attack us, or planes would fall from the sky, or nuclear power plants would blow up. It never happened. You don't hear about it. The reason it didn't happen is because a team of dedicated engineers around the world who were very hardworking went back and fixed all the clocks. I think we're in this period now. Quantum is coming. We need to go back and fix our encryption standards to be post-quantum ready. That's using the latest standards, which have been published by NIST, on data at rest and things like that, and start doing it. We're actually doing it with our data. So all our products come data at rest, quantum proof encryption. And we're looking at the rest of it right now. But you need to do it because it's seeped into everything. It's seeped into how I send a text message or how I send a WhatsApp communication, into this, again, broadcast. It's the foundation of modern communication, secure communication, and we need to look at it. And again, you could use AI to do this, develop AI tools to look and point and go, well, I need to fix this because it's using the wrong standard. Encryption is probably a big one, and it's one that I would certainly look at.
But do you think that most enterprises today are even aware of which parts of their encryption infrastructure are ready for quantum?
No, I do not. I believe they aren't aware of this at all. And certainly the ones that I'm speaking to are asking questions, but they don't know what they've got and what standards they're using throughout their infrastructure. So again, I believe NIST are looking at this. They're looking at developing tools to look into your environment, or at least a process to identify it and say, what am I using? Where? What's the biggest risk? So you can go about fixing it. Again, similar to the way we attacked Y2K, we need to start now and identify what's at risk. Go for the low-hanging fruit, the bits that the attackers want, because this is interesting. We're seeing in industry people stealing data. It's encrypted, but they don't care. They're stealing aviation data, finance data, medical records, and government data, and they're storing it in long-term storage, ready for quantum coming so they can decrypt it, because it will have just as much value then as it does now. If you take medical industry, for example, medical data lasts the length of the patient, if not longer. And it's incredibly valuable. If you look at people trying to sell on medical data, it's a very valuable subject. So people are stealing data now and trying to decrypt it later when they get access to quantum.
Adam, you brought up something I think a lot of leaders need to hear, because you've have encryption in place, but that doesn't mean that it is relevant for what's actually really coming next. And that brings me to the bigger question, beyond encryption. What does an AI ready security strategy look like? I mean, there's a lot of talk about AI ready security strategy on paper, but what does it actually mean in practice?
I think, again, it goes back to the fundamentals. You need to do the fundamentals right. But then once we've covered that and you've got your fundamentals right, it's baking security into every part of the process and then layering on those tools. And we actually have a lot of these tools already in market. They're already there. So we don't have to go out here and reinvent the wheel. Let's take a look at things like MAV, multi-admin verification. This is a great one. And it's one that I wish was introduced when I was an engineer and in support, because maybe I wouldn't have been so bad at my job. What it is it's like the nuclear launch keys on a Hollywood movie. Have you ever seen it where they turn the keys at the same time? It takes two people to do it. Well, you do that because you can't have one bad actor launching a nuclear missile. You have to have two people authenticate. Now, the same is for our data and our technology stack. If you want to make a big change, run a model training program, delete some significant portion of data, take a snapshot, run a mutability, it takes two people, two administrators to do it. And this is a really good way of catching bad actors in your environment. But 9 times out of 10, it just catches a mistake. Somebody who was doing something by accident, which we're all human, we all make mistakes, and we're not looking to punish people for that. We're just looking to stop it. So these are some of the tools that we have on the bandwagon right now. And the other one I would point to, which is a really good one, is immutability. We kind of already mentioned it previously, but immutability is key. Now, it's key in 2 aspects here. One, taking a copy of my data that nobody can touch. And that's ever more important as AI is creating documents and putting it into our general populace of information. I want a clean version of my data. And secondly, it stops people from injecting bad data or messing with it. A really popular area for this is logs. And I'll tell you why. Because logs tell a story. Once you've been breached, attackers will try and delete your backups and delete your logs, because you'll never be able to figure out how they got in. You can never plug the gap. So we use immutability to stop our logs from being deleted, stop our backups from being deleted, and protect our training data or all our data that's tier 1 production. So these are some of the tools we need in our AI cybersecurity ready strategy.
2 points here. First, you talked about how AI is being attacked more than ever. So we talked about data poisoning, then there is model hijacking, and there is injections. And the second one has got to do more with the logs and the backups, which are essentially the first thing that hackers go after. So I'm going to probably approach this one by one. I'd love for you to break down and talk about what happens when attackers are starting to target the model themselves, and how are companies you're working with preparing for threats like these? That is the first one.
Yeah, that's a good one, and it's actually one that the European Union think is a threat. If you look in the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, there is a section pointing to data poisoning, and they're worried about people poisoning data for artificial intelligences, making them do nefarious things in the future. And so that's a worry. I mean, data poisoning's been around for a very long time, from SQL injections to everything. But the threat here becomes exponential. If we take the Google Gemini pizza example, I don't know if you've seen this one, but there was a point in time where you could Google cheese pizza recipe in Gemini, and it would spit back a recipe that involved you putting glue in it. Now, I can't cook, and I'm the kind of guy who would read that recipe and go, oh yeah, glue, that's definitely in there. And I'd be putting glue in it. But the reason why we talk about this is because that was dirty data. It wasn't put there on purpose, but it scanned Reddit. It found someone talking about marketing data and about how you create that stretchy cheese look for pictures. Well, they put glue in it. The point stands here is that if that can happen, the next logical step is that people would deliberately poison data as a ticking time bomb and put it into artificial intelligence. Now, this could happen, and the EU has rightly called that out, so we need to protect ourselves. It goes back to those things. It goes back to access, immutability, and user behavior analytics, watching what people are doing, using the tools that we have already to stop these things from. So that's the first part of that, I'd say. And apologies, I've forgotten the second part.
Right. No. So we were still talking about how companies that you're working with are preparing themselves for threats like model hijacking or injections.
Yeah. So
So that was the first one. The second one, actually, I had for you. When you're looking at logs and backups, that's the first thing that attackers go after. And yet, something like encryption gets overlooked. I really want you to talk to us a little about the importance of encrypting data across the life cycle, if you know what I mean. I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there who think they've checked boxes in cryptographic terms, but how do you explain the importance of encryption in transit, in rest, or in use?
That's a good one. It really is, actually, because it's actually a complex, I would say, subject. Because you've mentioned 3 points there: at rest, in transit, and in use. And there has been attacks, documented attacks in all of those areas. You had the classic VMware one, where I think they went after the memory of one virtual machine and was able to corrupt another one. So these things do happen, and you need to apply your encryption standards where possible. And as I mentioned, it's kind of an area that's overlooked. So when we discuss it with our customers, we start by asking the question, are you in control of your data? And funny enough, this is the conversation again. It seems to be gaining a lot of traction. It sparks a conversation of data sovereignty. Do you know what laws and requirements you have to apply to your data? Which fundamentally asks the question, are you in control of your data?
Right.
The easiest way to lose control of your data is to have it stolen. And if someone steals your data, but it's quantum proof encrypted, they can't do anything with it. So if they stole my data, I've got the keys stored in a separate location. They're never going to be able to access it anyway. So have I lost control? Have I lost data sovereignty? I would say here, though, prevention is better than the cure. So never bank on my last line of defense, ever. Always use like an onion or a castle. Have the stopping mechanisms up front. And that goes back to access. We use something called F policy, which does things like blocks known extensions and gets you really finely granular into who can access what and why. We have a tool, it's absolutely brilliant, and it's really good for showing executives. It scans your environment, and it gives you a nice little graphical output of access. Who has access to what in a percentage? So 100% of your data can be accessible by 80% of your workforce. That's not a good thing. I don't want that. I want it the other way around, because that's an open door policy. So we start with areas like this, locking it down, and then applying some of those other technologies which we talk about when it comes to encryption. And again, specifically with AI, because AI supercharges the attack. We can have it sub-millisecond, firing at multiple different attack vectors. So we need to lock it down and encrypt it as much as possible.
Adam, now let's step out of the stack for a second, because at the heart of all of this, data security, AI, is actually the leadership, right? And we spoke about it earlier. We talked about regulations, and regulations are more of a responsibility. But I want to dig into that a little more. Obviously, trust isn't built overnight, especially when you're building businesses, tech, and you're trying to bring in compliance as well. What's your approach been to building trust across teams, clients, or even regulators, especially across different roles?
So I think to start from a very high level, to build trust is to be honest. I always tell you if I don't know something, and I'm not going to try and lie to you because I've tried that before and you just get caught out. So be honest about what you know. And explainability. Can you explain what you're doing? And can you explain it to like a young person? I often try and explain things to my daughter. I'm doing this, and she keeps asking why and why and why, and it gets me to the point where I'm actually like, why am I doing this? This doesn't sound good. And I treat it the same way with regulators. So when a regulator comes to your environment and wants to have a look around, can I explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it? That's very, very high level. And then moving down through the stack, people often worry about regulation and they'll look at it and say, well, it's very difficult to achieve. But actually, we've got a lot of the tools and the frameworks already available to us. If you look at the NIST Cybersecurity Protocol, and then you look at things like the EU AI Act or NIS2, which is covering critical infrastructure in the European Union. By the way, that's been copied in multiple geos. So most people have something similar to the way that GDPR was copied, that protects your personal data. There are frameworks out there already to protect these, and you can follow them. It's not such an onerous task. So you can build trust by saying, this isn't going to break you. You can start small and build on it and explain what you know. I often find as well that if you turn up to a meeting and it's your team, you have to come prepared and bring some knowledge to the table that other people don't have to gain trust and say, look, this is what I've got. This is how we're going to look at it. And then let people push back and say, I don't agree.
And I think in one of our previous conversations, you'd drawn comparison between fire exits and AI regulation. And I was thinking about it. How do you make stakeholders look at regulations as more of empowerment and not just compliance?
That is a brilliant question. Yeah, because people do that. They look at regulation and see it as a hindrance, as a burden, a stifler of innovation. And in fact, the European Union recognizes this. In the EU AI Act, there is a whole article dedicated to innovation. And they're setting up innovation labs within the European Union for artificial intelligence. So rightly so, and rightly called out. Now, when I have this conversation with people, I use the analogy of fire exits, as you pointed out. When you've been to the cinema recently, I'm assuming most people have been to the cinema, you probably didn't realize that there's some fire exits at the bottom. And unfortunately, they're there because somebody got hurt. And that's why we often say regulation is written in blood, because somebody got hurt. We had to write a law to stop it from happening again. But that regulation doesn't stop me going to the cinema, doesn't stop me attending conferences, and doesn't stop me doing the things that I want to do. Good regulation walks a very fine line between not stifling innovation, but stopping us from hurting ourselves. Now, let's take the example of artificial intelligence being used in our critical infrastructure, which it will be used, and it's starting to. Let's take trains, because I'm a bit of a train geek. Kind of guy who likes regulation, likes trains. What a surprise. If we start modeling train routes, dynamically routing trains based on load with artificial intelligence, we need to, one, protect it, and two, make it accountable. So if I'm the train operator and I say, yes, you can send that train from here to here, I agree with what the AI is telling me, I need to put my fingerprint on it. That needs to go into a log. And as we discussed earlier, that needs to be protected because we can wind back and have a look and say, well, who authorized that decision? Now, you can easily see how this applies to the medical industry too. For the European Union in the Artificial Intelligence Act, this actually gets fitted into the high-risk criteria. Anything that is safety conscious goes into that kind of high-risk criteria. But the requirements of these are not prohibitive. They're the basic things you should be doing, and we've already mentioned them. Encryption, keeping a log of your activity, making your artificial intelligence documented, easily accessible, and just basically being good. These are all the things that developers already do. Most organizations are already doing these things. So it's not such an onerous task.
I love that analogy back then when we spoke about it, and I still love it to this date. And especially the point about regulations enabling innovation and not stifling it. I think that's a mindset that we actually don't hear enough. And I want to close this section with a bit of advice for the next generation of leaders listening. Now, what's that one mental shift they need to make to thrive in this AI first world?
Yeah, I'd probably approach that with two things. One is read, and read a lot. I'm a huge reader myself personally, and I don't just mean books. I mean read anything that's interesting to you that's in the news or that is, say, regulation. It sparked a passion in me one night when my daughter couldn't sleep, and I googled Dora. You know, Dora the stories, Dora the Explorer.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out there's a piece of regulation called Dora, right? And I ended up bringing up Dora the regulation, and I read it to her, and she fell asleep in the first paragraph. But I kept going. I kept going, and it's 112 pages long, size 12 font, and it was fascinating. And it talks about resiliency in the finance sector and how everything is connected. So if I can disrupt the finance sector, I can disrupt an economy. So we absolutely need to protect this. It's vital to our to our safety. Be curious, read, and second one is listen, because I think a lot of people don't listen. Active listening is incredibly hard to do. To be able to play back what I've said to you or vice versa is often quite a skill. So I would say read and listen. Those are the two things.
Right, and I think we've spoken about the T-shaped knowledge model at some point in one of our previous conversations. Would love for you to double click on that a little more, please.
Yeah, so the T, and I describe it as the T. I'm assuming there's many different ways of people describing this, but I don't think anyone can be an expert on everything at once. So I have a T focus. The bottom of the T that comes down is a heavy depth of knowledge into one or two subject areas. And then the top of the T, the cross, is the bit where it's a high level, a bit of industry experience from all different areas. And then as you move around, lift your T up and place it somewhere else. And you'll probably forget a little bit of the depth of the previous subject, but it'll float up to the top of your T bar. And then before you know it, your T is very long, and you can drop it anywhere and go learn something and extend the top. And these people I find are the most fascinating people, because you can have a conversation about anything with them. And they've always got something interesting to say. And I'm probably the last one at the party every time, leaning against the bar, talking to somebody like this, asking their opinion on things.
Fantastic. So Adam, you've given us a masterclass on, leading with clarity, staying curious, obviously navigating the complexities of AI. But before we wrap up, I'd love to shift gears, get to know the lighter side of Adam, the quirks, the habits, and the guilty pleasures that don't turn up on LinkedIn. So if you're ready, we'd love for you to go. So if you're ready, we'd love for you to have a go at the rapid fire section.
Sure, absolutely love to.
Fantastic. So early riser or night owl?
Actually a bit of both, because I work dual time zones. I get up really early and then work that shift, and then at lunchtime or later, I might have a little nap. Probably shouldn't admit that. I hope my manager's not listening. And then I'll end up working US hours. Right. So I work later in the evening. It actually affords me interesting opportunities. I get to pick my daughter up from school most days, which is incredibly important to me. So I work quite a lot.
One thing that you totally nerd out on outside of work?
Outside of work. I'm getting into bodybuilding or body strength training.
Nice.
My father is an incredibly fit man for his 71 years of age, and he's a bit of a role model to me. He is my role model. And he can still beat me in an arm wrestle. He can still sit on me and I can't get up. He's got we call it old man strength. He's got old man strength. Yeah. And he says that he's so active because of his strength. So I am working on being a bit stronger.
If your life had a soundtrack, what would be it?
Oh, it would be something from Cocktail. I don't know if you've seen that movie with Tom Cruise, but me and my brother are massive Tom Cruise fans. So it would be something from Cocktail, probably. Probably the one where they're on the beach and it's like Coco something. It'll come back to me.
A hobby or a skill you're currently learning outside of work?
Good question. What am I working on? I'm working on learning and understanding engines and cars because it's one of those skills that I think, again, is going away as we move towards electric cars. So again, from my father, who could rebuild his own engine and weld his own car, it's a skill that he's passing on to me. So learning those things.
You have an hour completely free. How do you waste it happily?
Am I wasting? Reading. Probably pick a good book or reading or going for a walk if I can to try and clear my mind.
Talking about books, if you went to a bookstore, what section would you head into first?
Sci-fi, probably every single time. Yeah, straight to sci-fi, classic sci-fi or space opera.
If you're at a dinner party, are you telling the story or asking the questions?
Both. As I said, it goes back to listening, active listening, asking somebody, really truly listening, and then being able to respond with what they've talked about. I think it's a skill that is certainly lacking. So a bit of both.
What's that one piece of advice you actually give but don't live by?
Don't live by. Only stop eating when you're full. Yeah. I can't help it. Like, if we're out and it's a good meal and there is some amazing food here. I had Lebanese the other day and I was full, but I just kept on going. I couldn't help it.
If you had a personal assistant, what would it never be allowed to do?
My ironing. I take my ironing very seriously. Yes. They're not touching my shirts and they're not touching my ironing. Absolutely not.
Okay, so you've got a superpower, but that's only useful in meetings. What would it be?
I can fall asleep, but I look awake. Yes.
And so a final one now. Your home screen wallpaper says a lot about yourself. What's yours right now?
I just rebuilt my laptop, so it's the standard one. But previously to that, I generally go with a family picture, which is a bit boring, I know. But it makes me happy. I see a picture of my daughter laughing, and I can hear it in my ears. So I like that.
That's so beautiful, Adam. This has been an absolutely incredible conversation. A lot of practical insights, thought-provoking perspectives as well. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Thank you once again. And any parting words?
Thank you. Thank you for giving this opportunity to speak to you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And, I would love to do this again in the future. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.